Welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I started an eco conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, Oxford Clay, I don't just make pottery, I also make books and courses for other potters who want to be more environmentally friendly in their pottery making. And that's what this podcast is all about. And I can't wait to get started. Let's go. Hello, welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Tomlinson, and it's so nice to be back here with you on this week's episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about um, a technique that I've just been experimenting with recently because experimenting in pottery is my absolute favorite thing to do. Um, and I thought it'd be really interesting just to kind of share some experiments that I've been doing recently with that involve basically adding the pigment verdigris to clay to make color. This actually, came to me in a dream. So it was like a couple of months ago, I had a dream where somebody said to me, "You should try adding verdigris to clay." And I was like and then I woke up and I was like, "Yeah, I should that's something I should definitely try." This is me telling you about how it went, basically. So my first step was that, when I had this dream that where someone told me, "You should add verdigris to clay," I thought I probably should get some books out of the library on, adding oxides to clay and, to help me, like, where do I start with this? Because I have actually seen this as a technique used, and there's a technique, in pottery called, agate, which is when like different colored clays, so they don't need to be necessarily colored with like an oxide, as in like somebody's actually colored them with an oxide. You could maybe use like, say, like a red clay and then like, a white earthenware, like a red earthenware and a white earthenware clay. And agate is when they're kind of mixed together purposefully in kind of layers, they're kind of mixed together and to create a kind of decorative effect, which is like intrinsic to the clay. So potters they do color clay with oxides and stains as well, to kind of create these decorative effects. So not necessarily just just because not necessarily to make agate ware, but they can use it to kind of color little bits of their pottery, or just for like any kind of decoration where you want it to be the color to be sort of like intrinsic to the clay. So I thought this would be such an interesting thing to try with verdigris. So if like you never heard of verdigris before and you're like, what's going on? What's verdigris? It's basically a pigment that you can make from copper. So I make my verdigris from copper wire, which I get from charity shops where they have like broken electricals or random wires that people have like donated to them, and we can't use this. They would normally sell it for scrap, but I've been to like buying it off the charity shop, stripping the casing from the wire, so you're kind of left with this like beautiful copper wire nest, um, massive wire, and then I basically spray the copper wire with vinegar, a little bit of salt in there as well to kind of basically create that oxidization process that you would normally get when you see, say, like copper roofs of buildings and stuff, and they're all kind of that greeny blue color. That is verdigris. It's like the very top layer of the copper creates verdigris, and then you can actually crumble this off once it's all kind of been oxidizing for a little while. You can crumble it off, and it creates this beautiful kind of bright green powder that you can use in your pottery. So we're going to be talking today about like obviously adding it to clay, but you can also just paint it on like you would, another oxide. I'm just holding up a dish here which has like verdigris. It's a really beautiful color because it's like a kind of a really gentle green color. So I basically use it kind of, I guess, like topically. I think just after I've glazed, I make these like little dishes, and they've got like butterflies on, sprig mold butterflies, which I make in a silicone mold. And I then, just like after they've been dipped in like an ash glaze, I then just paint on a little bit of the verdigris just on the design, and it creates this like lovely kind of like very light kind of green color, or just on the butterfly. So I really love it as an oxide. It's so good because it's used, making it yourself, and we're not having to like, mine any like raw materials to make those oxides. That's why it's like so good. That's why like I want to use it in my pottery basically because I can make it myself from recycled copper, basically recycled copper into verdigris, which is it's amazing. So so where do you start? You're adding verdigris to clay. Where do you start? Well, you start by, yeah, like I said, getting some books out of the library. And I'm just going to read you out a little bit from this book, which is one of the books I got to sort of help me do with this technique, which is The New Ceramics Surface Decoration by Kevin Millward. Okay, so this is what Kevin Millward says about adding color to clay. So you can add raw oxides or body stains to achieve the effect of colored clay for inlaying or hand building shapes and forms. The clay body you choose can be seriously affected by the addition of oxides and stains. Okay, so this is a word this is a word of caution. So when I read this, I was like, uh oh. It said they may increase but more likely decrease the maturing point or recommended firing temperature by as much as 50 degrees, thereby dramatically increasing the shrinkage rate of that clay. So, if you're combining colors, you must consider these effects as they can cause severe distortion, splitting, cracking, and in some circumstances, a complete meltdown. Yikes. Okay. I'm just interrupting this episode to tell you about a totally free guide I've made just for you on how to make a stoneware pottery glaze. So, if you've never made a glaze before, or if you make loads of glazes and you just want a recipe, this guide is for you. It tells you everything you need to know, and it's available via the link in the show notes. Let's get on with the episode. So, um, so I read that and I was like, uh oh, how's this going to go? um, so yeah. Okay, so yeah, the other book I got out of the library, like so yeah, was like a book on well, it was the same similar kind of thing, and it's got a whole section on agate basically. And so I thought, okay, this is great. It's going to tell me like, how to color the clay and stuff like that, and this is called Pottery Techniques of Decoration by John Colbeck. So this was a really interesting like book because it sort of told you all the technical like the sort of techniques of how you would create agate pottery, but to say neither of like surface decoration and pottery techniques of decoration had the information about like how much of the oxide or stain to add to the clay to color it. And this was the crucial bit of knowledge that I didn't know. So yeah, so I basically went on YouTube and found a really good video of someone like actually how they did it. So they basically took the stain, they were wearing gloves. You couldn't see their face, but they were probably wearing a face mask. That's another thing to say, just like don't breathe in, verdigris. You don't want to be breathing it in. You don't want to be getting it on your skin. So wore gloves, and I basically yeah, so this video was great. It basically just had them weighing out some of the oxide they were coloring clay with, and then they just like mixed it into the clay, and it just showed them kind of like kneading it in. And what they said was, I think they were adding it at a ratio of like, I can't remember exactly how much they used, but it made me realize, I think they used maybe like 1% or something. It made me realize that actually 5%, because these are what I was thinking maybe I could try 5% because I know that verdigris is quite a weak colorant. So I thought, maybe I should go a bit higher than they went. And so I think they did like 1 or 2% in terms of like the weight of the clay. So say for example you had 100 grams of wet clay. That's another reason I wanted to watch a video on it, or to find out how to do it exactly, because I was like, how in glazes you're weighing out dry ingredients, but with clay, with adding oxides to clay, it's like you're going to be adding a dry ingredient to like a wet clay. So like how does that work in terms of like the weighing it out? So that's another reason I wanted to watch a video. And what they did basically was they just had the wet clay, they just weighed it. So say for example, you're making a little test, take 100 grams of that wet clay, and then say you're adding 1%, that'd be like 1 gram of your oxide, and then like you're mixing it in. And that was kind of essentially it. So I just really needed to know, like, how does this work in terms of the ratios? How much should I be adding? And so the experiments were, yeah. So basically, that's how I did it. I basically weighed out. I did a 3% and I did a 5%, and I just weighed out the verdigris with a little tiny scales that I got for, I think it's like a sort of pharmacy type scales. I got it off the internet. It's really good for doing like very small glaze testing and stuff. And anything like this where you're just doing like a small amount. And then I just did like 100 grams of clay. So I thought I just need a tiny amount. I mixed the verdigris then into the clay, just like kind of kneaded it in. Once I'd weighed it out, just mixed the verdigris powder. And then I ended up with like a clay that, to be honest with you, looked really similar to the clay I started with. So that was a reason I thought, like, maybe I should do 5% one and a 3% one. I did the 3% one first and saw that it really hadn't really made a difference to like the color of the clay. Whereas when I watched this YouTube video, the color of the clay, they were coloring it black, and it went completely like, quite a different color. They compared them. It was like one was like properly gray, and the other one was like, the original kind of neutrally colored sort of clay. So yeah, I thought, yeah, I'm not sure. So let's do a 5% one as well. So then I literally just mixed it in, added a little bit of water because the verdigris was kind of, some of the particles of it were quite large. So I guess ideally maybe you should be sieving the verdigris before you add it to the clay, I guess in an ideal world. But I didn't, and so I ended up just having to mix it really, really well with like a plastic. I just mixed it with a plastic sort of spatula, just squished it on a surface, really mixed it in there, added a little bit of water to try and sort of really get the verdigris particles like integrated into the clay. And then I was left with yeah, a clay with verdigris in. So yeah, so let me show you the results because it's quite exciting. So right, let's do the 3% one first. Okay, so 3%. So what I did next was I took a silicone mold of a bird, which is a cake making, it's for sugarcraft, and I just brushed a little bit of corn flour into that mold. And then I used the 3% clay. I just like pushed it into the mold. And that's how I make my sprigs normally. There's like beautiful, there's so many beautiful decorations from the sugar crafting, cake making industry. And yeah, so it's a little bird, basically, a little sprig of a bird. And it's come out so beautiful. So if I try and describe this to you, it's like basically, yeah, so like I said, I did it in a sprig mold. Then what I did was I turned it out when it's kind of leather hardish, and then stuck it onto a heart, a pottery, just a flat piece of pottery, and stuck it on with some slip, some casting slip, and then just let it dry like naturally. But when it's been, then what I did was actually I glazed it at the raw glaze stage. So I glazed it at the bone dry stage because I thought I don't want to like fire this in a bisque kiln. I just wanted to do quite a quick experiment. I thought, like, I don't want to fire it in a bisque kiln and then like like have to wait for like and then glaze it. So I basically just yeah, just like glaze it straight away with an ash glaze that I normally use, which is just 40 parts hardwood ash recycled from wood burning stoves, um, 40 parts Cornish stone, and then 20 parts quartz, and just literally painted it over the top with a paintbrush. And what it's made is it's a really beautiful kind of brown color. It's surprisingly brown. It's kind of, I thought it would come out quite green, but it's gone that kind of brown that you get sometimes if you're using copper oxide in your pottery and you accidentally sort of paint on a bit too much and it goes that kind of, that kind of metally type, that kind of weird, almost like a pewter type color. It's kind of akin to that really, because it's like, but it's not fully, metallic. It's kind of just a kind of browny, greeny kind of color. But the glaze actually being glazed on top has really brought out the color, and it is so beautiful because like each of the feathers on the design, it's really brought out the design. So that was, I would say, that was like, I mean, it did use a lot of the verdigris. So I would say, that's the only drawback with this, is that it's really uneconomical in terms of like how much verdigris you had to make. It basically ended up using like all my verdigris. That's like an empty bowl of verdigris left. It's literally like none left. And it does, it does take a little while to make it. So I'm like, no, I'm gonna make like more now and stuff. Um, but it was really worth it in terms of the experiment. So yeah, I would say if you're making like a small, if you're making it in small amounts and you're making like a small sprig or something to put on your pottery, it can be like an incredibly beautiful decoration to do. So I think that's brought out the sort of the design, the kind of the intricate like feathers on that design more than it would be if I just like literally painted verdigris on top of it. So yeah, really interesting. And like let's look at the so that was the five that was a 3%, that was a 3% verdigris added to clay. So that was like 3 grams of verdigris added to 100 grams of clay. And then the next experiment was the 5% one. So basically, I'll describe this to you on the podcast. It's exactly the same technique that I used. I just stuck a bird, exact bird, stuck a bird on on a heart decoration, and then did a little hole so you can like kind of hang it up and stuff. If yeah, if you wanted to like make it's like a wall hanging design sort of thing. And this one was just a lot darker, basically. Just like it's yeah, there's patches of it where it has gone that kind of proper copper oxide kind of metallic-y type, like surface, where it actually kind of disrupts the surface of it. You can see it kind of gone a ever so slightly kind of matte, where it's like, it's been like, super, super concentrated and stuff. So again, it's brought out the kind of design, the bird design, but it's quite it's because it's a kind of like a dark brown kind of metallic-y kind of color. And I actually think this is probably a little bit too dark to kind of bring out the design. So that's the 3% one again. And it's you can really see the feathers design on that. And then the 5% one is just a lot like sort of darker, and you can't see the design as much, the distinction of the feathers in the design. The interesting thing about this is as well, it didn't really run. I was expecting the fact that it was so concentrated with verdigris and it was glazed over as well, that it would all kind of seep into the glaze around it and stuff. And it hasn't really done that. It's kind of mainly contained itself to the design. So um, yeah, amazing. Really, like, impressed with that as a technique, but I don't know if I would use it a lot just because of the fact that it's used so much verdigris, which is kind of, yeah, not as good. So interesting, but I'm really glad I experimented with it, and I've got a little bit left as well. Like I said, I've got like a little jar full left of clay, so I might do some more designs, and I might even do some more experiments where I sort of do maybe even less verdigris. So I think maybe, if you maybe even if did it at like sort of maybe even 1.5% or something verdigris, that might still make a quite an interesting coloration, a real definition of a design, but then not kind of be so yeah, like patches where it's kind of gone metallic and stuff. And also, you wouldn't be using, as much verdigris. So yeah, so that was adding verdigris to clay. And it's been so nice talking to you about this latest experiment at Oxford Clay. Me just messing about with different things to kind of try and create color in different ways and like designs and stuff. So yeah, it's been so nice to talk to you about um, adding verdigris to clay. And yeah, wishing you very happy potting until the next episode, and really looking forward to seeing you then. Goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me on that episode. And if you want to find out more about eco friendly pottery, head over to the Oxford Clay website, which is www.oxfordclay.co.uk. Can't wait to see you there.